Your attention to this short video.
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Public speakers will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The chair will call upon public speakers at the appropriate time. Each public speaker is requested to state their name and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Public speakers who wish to speak in person should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Public speakers participating by Zoom who are wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of any written correspondence would like to speak during the meeting, they should raise their hand or submit a public speaker card. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you. Emily, please conduct the roll call.
Commissioner G.
Here.
Vice Chair Xavier.
Here.
Chair Noack.
Here.
Right, we do have a quorum with Commissioners Arner, Timbernall absent.
Great, thank you. First item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the committee regarding any item that's not listed on the agenda. Do we have any public comments?
We do not have any public comments, written or virtual.
Great, thank you. We'll now move on to the consent calendar items. Are there any changes or comments from the committee on the consent? Seeing none, is there any public comment on consent calendar?
We have no public comment, written or virtual.
Okay, great. Can I have a motion and a second on the consent?
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner G.
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier.
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
Any motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Arner, Timbernall absent.
Great. We'll now move on to the regular agenda items. The first item will be introduced by Lindy. And
Good morning, Chair Noack.
On one, right?
Yes, we are going to introduce Mr. Mark Watts online. He's joining us virtually this morning to provide a state legislative update. It's a very busy time of the year, so I'm sure Mark is keeping up with all that busyness. Good morning, Mark.
Hi, Lindy. Thank you, and thank you, committee members. I do apologize for appearing virtually, but it was unavoidable. Just as a reminder, at this point in time, this is the next to last week of the legislative session. Today is the last day for amendments without going through some very special Rules Committee hoops. And both houses adjourn a week from tomorrow. And after that, the next two deadlines or calendar dates of note are October 12th. That's when the governor would have the ability, the last day of his ability to veto or approve bills that were sent to him this session. And then on January 5th, 2026, we'll all start the year over again with a brand new slate of bills to take a look at. Other than the big news of the day, which is the midterm congressional redistricting, Proposition 50 is now on the ballot. Focus has returned to legislation as the political folks started dealing with Proposition 50. Probably one of the most heightened area of interest is the cap and trade. You recall, I think I mentioned in the past that the governor had asked for an extension of the authority to auction the emission credits from 2030, which is what the deadline is now, or the deadline, to 2045. He also asked that funds be set aside from current auction proceeds for backfilling CAL FIRE, as well as providing $1 billion ongoing for high-speed rail. That latter part, the high-speed rail, is at the heart of the discussions right now. So there's been no agreement between the legislature and the governor on extending cap and trade. The assembly has come the furthest in terms of putting something into play publicly. It would have been an extension with a number of modest corrections and updates to the auction process and the credit issuance process, but not for dealing with the actual GGRF revenues. There is a letter coming in from the LA delegation supporting the extension of high speed, the extension of cap and trade, and they are calling for the funding of funds for high speed rail that would also provide money for the so-called bookend projects. You may recall or be aware of current efforts for bookends. Bookends refers to the ability in Proposition 1A that is the heart of funding high-speed rail. There was nearly $1 billion set aside for local allocations, and those became known as the bookends, one for the north, one for the south. There was an agreement in place at that point in time. It hasn't been fully fulfilled. So the Southern California delegation is saying, let's get back, let's extend the cap and trade, let's give high-speed rail the money it requires, but out of that, let's make sure we fund the bookends. I will say this, I do know that MTC and Bay Area folks are developing their own bookends-oriented letters, and I have not seen that yet. Moving on beyond cap and trade, I think that's going to be something that either gets settled this next week or it's going to be put over. That's not a very good projection. It's just the way it's going to be. I do know that the Assembly is conducting a 2-hour offsite today or tomorrow where they will talk about a number of major issues, try to come up with an approach from the House. One of the items is cap and trade, so I'll set that aside. There has been, last week was the date for the release in both houses of the appropriations suspense files. And a couple of key bills to note that moved on were AB 33 that deals with autonomous vehicles. That bill is still presently on the Assembly floor. SB 71 was authorized to leave the Assembly suspense file, and it is pending. It was amended to strike an area of CEQA exemption for environmental leadership projects, but the rest of the CEQA exemptions stay intact at this point in time. I would also go on to mention that late last week, and I think over the weekend, a particularly interesting development occurred, and that was the authorization by the Secretary of State of California to authorize an initiative to move forward and collect signatures. That initiative, it doesn't have an official title, but that initiative is very similar to an initiative in many regards that was in play in 2024 that was ultimately thrown out by the state Supreme Court. This version of the initiative would limit the voters' ability to pass voter-approved special taxes through a local initiative with an approval threshold of a majority. It would mandate that it be a 2/3 vote level. And that initiative, if it does qualify, they have to gather their signatures and turn them in by February 25th to 26th. And they would need almost 900,000 signatures, which means they probably need to collect at least twice as many of that number to ensure that they have that they fulfill the accurate count of 875,000. I will say that if that measure does qualify and went on the ballot, it would potentially threaten the ability of the establishment of the district in SB 63, the taxing district. It would that measure does allow for a local initiative. And this would make the threshold for a local initiative this measure would come in afterwards or at the same time. I'm not sure the scheduling of that, but it would have an effect on SB 63's district initiative authorization and approval rating or approval threshold. It would also clearly affect SB 512, which is on the matrix, and that bill would authorize county level transportation authorities such as CCTA to pursue an initiative and thereby gain a majority vote rather than the 2/3 vote. The measure that I've talked about that was qualified to move forward this weekend would have an effect on that as well. So with that, I'll bring this to a close. I've got more detailed information on some of the stuff that people would like, but I think you get a sense that there's a lot of moving parts up here, and it's not just in the legislature. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Lindy, any questions? Sorry, any questions? Mark, just to clarify, what's the bill that's addressing the citizens initiative levels?
It's a signature gathering effort.
Yeah, the signature gathering effort?
Yeah, so there's no legislation. It's an effort that would go through the Secretary of
Oh,
State and be
okay,
passed on the,
That's what I
through
thought.
the
I just
election.
wanted to clarify. Okay.
Yeah, so if I might throw one little tidbit in on that last issue. And that is the legislature had anticipated as a signature gathering initiative, such as the one we've been talking about. They approved a constitutional amendment that was going to go to the ballot in 2024, has been moved to 2026. And that measure says any statewide initiative that deals with vote threshold, that new measure would have to have the same threshold as being authorized in that new initiative. So in other words, if the measure by the Taxpayers Association that we've talked about requires a 2/3 vote to pass any measure for sales taxes, ACA 13, which does not yet have a proposition number, but it has qualified, would say, then therefore that measure has to have a 2/3 vote of the statewide population, quite a departure from majority vote. And it was directly on target for this kind of an effort. So if I didn't make that clear, I'll be glad to send a short note to Lindy to distribute afterwards to kind of pull that all together.
I'm also happy to talk to anyone
Yeah.
offline.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Any others? No? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I'm now happy to introduce Madeline from Ty Ginsburg and Associates. Ms. Pike is here to provide an update from the federal legislative session and what is happening at the federal government level, including the budget, which, as many of you know, is very much in flux at the moment. Good morning, Maddie.
Thanks, Lindy, and thanks everyone for having me. I hope you're having a great week. Yes, I'm here to give you just a brief congressional and federal update on what's going on in DC. So Congress has just reconvened in Washington after a long August and partial part of July recess. And while they were away, there wasn't much congressional action, but and federal action was fairly limited as well to agency level work. But they're returning to a big month in September with several deadlines. Most importantly, as Lindy noted, the end of congressional appropriations and potential government shutdown. So that's basically the most immediate issue on the agenda. The federal fiscal year ends on September 30th, and this is the deadline by which Congress needs to pass all 12 annual appropriations bills that fund the government. While the House and Senate have both been passing some of the bills in their respective chambers, it's basically unlikely, it's highly unlikely that they will be passed and signed into law by September 30th. So in order, and this happens fairly regularly, unfortunately, but in order to avoid a government shutdown, Congress must pass a short-term spending bill, which is called a continuing resolution, a CR. A government shutdown would occur if a CR is not enacted by October 1st. And if this were to happen, it would significantly disrupt funding for many federal programs and could delay or suspend some transportation projects from moving forward. Lawmakers are currently discussing this is within the past actual day or two, kind of a new short-term CR to extend the government potentially until mid-November. So this would give them more time in theory to negotiate a final budget agreement, although there's still a pretty big gap between what congressional leaders in the House and Senate on both sides, but even within the Republican leading faction are thinking and the administration. So there is discussion of a shorter term CR, a longer term CR. It's kind of just a wait and see type of thing right now. Basically every day something changes. But it's hard to kind of predict what's going to happen. So there is a chance that there will be a government shutdown, and we'll be obviously tracking that very closely. While I will say that while Congress was gone, there were some recent federal actions related to tariffs that have impacted the logistics and trucking industries. And I'm not going to go into detail on the specifics. I don't think there are many folks, even experts, that know everything right now. But what we are hearing and we are seeing is that the ripple effects of these tariffs are being felt in the supply chain and can influence freight volume and project costs. So this is definitely an evolving situation that we're going to monitor for potential impacts on the transportation sector in California in general. And I think that's about all I have. I have been working with Tim and Lindy. Thank you guys. And we're looking forward to having CCTA leadership in Washington in 2 weeks. And we have a robust schedule of congressional and federal meetings that we're shaping up right now, and looking forward to having the team in DC. So I think that's all I have, but I'm happy to answer any questions. So just let me know.
Thanks, Madeline. Any questions, comments? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comments?
We have no written or virtual public comments.
Great. We do not need any motions on that one. Next item is an information item presented by Ryan McLean to provide an update on the East Contra Costa County Automated Transit Network Project.
All right. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee members. Ryan McLean, Deputy Executive Director for Projects and Operations at CCTA. Also joining me virtually, we have Mike Thompson, who's Vice President of Project Development for Plenary Americas, who is our development partner on this project, and also Maria Ray, who is Senior Vice President for Government Affairs at Glideways, who is our technology partner on this project. So I had brought this item to the board back in May, and to kind of give a history of the project and how we got to where we are today, and wanted to come back to talk through kind of the results of the feasibility study that was being worked on at that time. So that's the update I'm here to present. So just a reminder in terms of kind of what the vision and objectives were for this project. This was in partnership with Tri-Delta Transit out in the East County, and it was really to try to solve the transit challenges that we have in East County. And so some of the goals around that were really to make this integrated with the investments that we've made out there in transit, including eBART extension, BART extension out there, all the different transit options that TriDelta is providing out there, and to come up with a new transit option that was integrated with that. It was also to do this in a cost-effective way. As we know, costs are continuing to be a challenge with any infrastructure improvements, so how do we minimize those costs going forward? It was to make it scalable, so as the development continues out there, obviously our fastest growing region in the county, to have a solution that could scale with that development, to have something somewhat exciting, catalytic, that could actually drive more development out there and economic growth. And then also, obviously, to meet our sustainability goals, so reducing single occupancy vehicle, mile travel, and reducing greenhouse gases. So with all that in mind, these just a reminder of what the key project parameters were on this that went out in the request for proposals that we put out. They were to make this on-demand service with minimizing wait times. The idea is that you can walk up to this solution whenever you want. You don't have to look at a timetable to figure out when you're going to make your connection to this. The option to not share a vehicle, so from a personal security standpoint, making this a private vehicle if you chose. Having it fully autonomous, GHG neutral, made in the USA, fully accessible, all vehicles being fully accessible, and then also to have this fully separated from traffic so that it's not held up by traffic on the roads. And then also to have it be, but still to have the option that it could operate on a road, the vehicle itself, if at some time that became desirable. So just to have the vehicle go through that sort of testing requirements. And this is just the image of what we would like to see here. The idea is that you could start to make more trips without an auto at all. Some of those would be dedicated to the ATN from point to point. Some of it would be connecting to BART. Some would be connecting to buses. Some could be connecting to even Amtrak. But the idea is that instead of getting in your car, driving to a parking lot, and then switching over to transit, to make your first choice to get into the transit. Where we currently are on the schedule, so we're in the system pre-development agreement phase right now, and we've basically transitioned into phase 2. So as a reminder, phase 1 and phase 2 are being paid for by the developer, and basically it's just our staff time is the investment that we're making currently. We just wrapped up phase 1, which was coming up with this first segment that's viable from financial standpoint with our partner and coming up with what that actually looks like. And then this next phase 2 that we're entering into, which I'll talk a little bit more about, but is really to identify funding sources and start to look at environmental scoping around that. It's expected to last around 10 to 12 months to then get to the next phase 3, which won't happen unless we find funding for phase 3. So some of the unique benefits of this, we're looking at a delivery timeline of 5 to 7 years, which that's operational running service, which is quick from this type of transit. Looking to attract private investment, but in the end, this will be a publicly owned asset. It's trying to reduce the amount of subsidy that's needed to operate this, so having a higher fare recovery. Looking at how this creates new economic and workforce development opportunities, and then also to actually be a stimulant for more development, sustainable development out in East County. So originally, a feasibility study was done to look at what this could look like in East County. And the idea was really to tie in neighborhoods to the BART stations, as well as to other transit options. So really connecting out the entire East County into the broader transit system. And one of the big benefits of this is that you can place a lot of these stations. So this is 28 miles with 44 stations was this long range goal of this. So with that density of stations, you can really capture a lot of walk shed with that, right? So you can get a lot more people that can walk, bike to a station, get on these vehicles without having to get in their car and go park somewhere. Proposed fares, again, was kind of an initial estimate, but the idea is that you can have a reduced fare if you're willing to share the vehicles with others, but you also have the option to have a private vehicle. And that extends to when you're traveling in groups as well. And then again, wait times of 2 to 5 minutes. So you're not consulting a timetable when you walk up to this thing. You're walking up, pushing a button, and the vehicle arrives. So from that larger build out, the goal of this feasibility study was to come up with this initial segment that was financially feasible to build out and actually start attracting passengers. And so this map, it's the purple, red, and blue lines, which hopefully that shows up. It's overlaid with Tri-Delta transit routes. That's the green and the cyan off to the side, just to show how this integrates with the system and how we chose where to look at for this initial segment. The idea here was really to connect to that last BART station on the line, because that's where we're trying to draw people to and have some immediate change from single occupancy vehicle over to transit. And this was seen as kind of the highest demand area. We looked at 3 different options. That's the blue, the red, and the purple here. And that kind of looked at different alignments on various sides in the center of SR4 out there. And this is a comparison. And again, it wasn't necessarily that these were exclusive. They could be mixed and matched a little bit to come up with our ultimate alignment, but had similar project costs. Going down the median was the cheapest, but obviously that also doesn't allow us to build quite as many neighborhood stations as we were looking for. So that's why you see the difference in the station counts. Also why the median has the lowest ridership forecast. Similar operating costs, similar fare recovery, more right-of-way challenges with the west and median options just because of what's available there. We had talked to East Bay Parks and to Contra Costa Water District to see about using some of their right-of-way. They did not have interest in this time at sharing their right-of-way with a vehicle like this, so that also kind of limited what we could do. Similar environmental constraints, but median and east side also were easier from an environmental standpoint. So the takeaways from all this is the east side was the most effective from a cost standpoint and constructability standpoint, but again, really we can kind of continue to refine that as the project moves forward. We also did a high-level comparison between other transit modes, especially when thinking about the median of SR4 and what could go there. You know, continuing eBART, looking at a BRT, the costs for this, for the ATN were significantly lower in building out that infrastructure. And also the fare box recovery, if everything plays out the way we're expecting it to, would also be much higher with this mode. And again, I think that one of the key points is that bottom row where it talks about the stations and the station density that we can get from this. It's just a smaller station than what's needed for BART, and so you can bring that into more neighborhood areas and make it much more accessible. So going back to kind of our key objectives, this would be a complementary service, again, tying directly into BART, complementing Tri-Delta's existing services. It's looking at the ridership, which would mostly come from people switching from single occupancy vehicles because now they can walk to a neighborhood station instead of getting in their car. And we see that as really important just because as soon as someone's in a car, it's hard to get them back out. So if they can go straight to this and be in transit from the start, we think that'll really help drive more transit ridership. Again, system integration with the technology, we can actually take people to, or we can load ATN vehicles at the BART station, say in the PM peak, so that they're ready to go when there's a lot of flexibility with this because we're dealing with small vehicles. And then operational model integration, this would be branded as TriDelta. So this isn't to replace TriDelta. We're working with TriDelta to have them operate this. And that's the same with the workforce development piece, is a command center operating this would be staffed by TriDelta. So integrating with the existing transit service was key to this. Jumping into the technology piece, so this is a timeline on the technology development. I think maybe all of you have been out to the Glideways test facility at Hilltop Mall. So that's coming along very quickly, looking to do rides out there later this year, before the end of the year. So really excited about how far along that has come. And so we actually just had a conversation with the CPUC about how this would work from a regulatory standpoint, California Public Utilities Commission. And so the technology is really moving along on pace to be ready for when we could build this out in East County. This used to be a rendering and has now switched over to an actual photo, so that's kind of cool that the progress has been made out there. Again, this is at Hilltop Mall, and looking for the fall to deliver the first rides so people can come try it out. So next steps for phase 2, doing a benefit cost analysis, doing the environmental scoping, seeing what is actually needed for the environmental process on this, and then really digging into the funding sources. I mean, this is still a large chunk of money that we need to find and figure out how to fund. Start talking to people at all levels of government about how this project could get funded. And then we also need to go out and actually procure a design firm and to do investment level forecasting for ridership as well. So that's expected to be about a 12-month process. That's the end of my presentation. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Questions? Yep, Darlene?
Thank you very much, Ryan. My question is the very last item you talked about, the subcontractor procurement. Could you expand that a little bit? Is that, because I thought the whole development team was already there, so is it CCTA that would be procuring this, or is it the development team that would be adding to their group?
So when this was originally, when the team was procured, a designer and the ridership firm were not procured with the through the federal process. So they can't continue on if there's federal dollars involved. And so this would be procuring them through a federal process so then they could work on the project if federal dollars were involved.
And so is that CCTA procuring it, or is it the development team procuring it?
This would be the development team procuring it.
So that they would actually, would they do an actual RFP process and a competitive?
Yeah, it would have to go through all that.
Okay.
Rita, any questions? Thank you. I was out there just recently. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
We have no public comments, written or virtual.
Okay,
All right,
great. Thanks,
you.
Ryan. Next item is an action item presented by Jay to discuss the 2026 State Transportation Improvement Program candidate projects. You guys are so fast, by the time I look up, you're already sitting.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Jay Zhang, Associate Engineer with the Authority. This item is related to the 2026 State Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP. I'll be going over the application evaluation process, recommendations, and at the last slide, there will be a fund exchange agreement. First, just a little bit of background on the program itself. The STIP is a 5-year programming document adopted by the CTC every 2 years. So each cycle, CTC will add 2 new programming years to the program. So the 2026 STIP will cover the 5-year period between fiscal year 27 and fiscal year 31. There are two programs under the STIP. There's an interregional transportation improvement program and another regional transportation improvement program. Caltrans handles the interregional program for the statewide highway system. It's about 25% of the STIP dollar amount, and the remaining 75% then gets divided into county shares. So CCTA, we make recommendations as to how our county share gets programmed into various projects. So we need to make that project list by October 2025 to meet MTC deadlines. And so the challenge with that is we won't know how much is available in the program by August of this year. Really to make that MTC deadline, we have to work much sooner in order to meet the state and the local deadline there. The STIP is a fairly flexible program. Any capital projects ranging from a roadway to a ped and bike project to a freeway project can all be funded through the STIP program. So as I mentioned earlier, we won't know how much is available until August, but the work started much sooner than that, so staff has been working since March to finalize the program guidelines and scoring criteria through working with the TCC, the Technical Coordinating Committee. And so that guideline was then approved by the board in April, and we released the call for projects on April 18th. The applications were due in June, and the STIP subcommittee reviewed and scored the applications on June 23rd. And I'll get into the subcommittee a little bit later. So after all that is done, the STIP subcommittee recommends the project list, and with your approval today, it will move forward to the board this month and to MTC in October, and eventually it will be adopted by the CTC in March of 2026. So the 2026 STIP cycle, we received 8 applications totaling about $88.6 million in funding request. So under good economic conditions, we've seen anywhere between $40 and $45 million for the STIP. And under worst conditions, we've seen $0. So as you can see, even under good conditions, this is a lot more than what we've anticipated to be available in the STIP. So out of the 8 applications, 6 of them were roadway projects, with the majority of them being complete streets and safety projects. And one of them from CCTA is the 684 freeway improvement project. And then we also received 2 applications from our transit operators. One of them is the fleet replacement, and the other one is facility upgrade. So going back on the subcommittee, it's really a subset of the Technical Coordinating Committee, or the TCC. To ensure fairness, we have representatives or members from all 4 RTPCs, as well as the transit operators. So these volunteers took a day out of their schedule to meet here in person to evaluate the applications. So as far as the evaluation process, the subcommittee is split into 2 groups. They each scored the applications, all of them, and at the end of session, they will reconvene and discuss their scoring and reconcile any differences. So here's the ranked project list based on their final score. This is also included in attachment A of the item. So the top 3 ranked projects are CCTA's Interstate 680 State Route 4 Interchange Improvement Project, City of Lafayette's Downtown Lafayette Aqueduct Pathway Project, and the City of Walnut Creek Oakland Boulevard Multimodal Improvement Project. So as I said earlier, the CTC adopted final fund estimate in October of this year. That number came out to be for our county about $13.6 million. After setting aside planning, programming, and monitoring, which is about 5% of the total capacity, the remaining capacity for programming is about 12.9 million. And so as you can see, the total request was 88 million. So unfortunately, we couldn't fund all of the requests with the capacity. So the subcommittee made the recommendation to fund the top-ranked project. Because CCTA, we were successful in receiving $58 million from the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, or the TCEP. The 684 project is now fully funded. So instead of taking the entire STIP amount for this project, we basically ranked ourselves third on the list after funding the 2 local projects. But you will see here on the last column that the project is not actually set to receive any STIP funding. I'll get to why that is a little bit later. But the 2 projects that will be receiving STIP funding are the City of Lafayette, Downtown Lafayette Aqueduct Pathway Project. This is a multi-use path, Class 1 path, in downtown Lafayette between Dolores Drive and the BART station. And the other project is the Walnut Creek Oakland Boulevard Multimodal Improvements Project. This is a project, this is a ped and bike improvement project on Oakland Boulevard between Mont Diablo Boulevard and Trinity Avenue. So Lafayette is requesting $2.335 million for construction, and Walnut Creek is requesting $9.2 million for design, right-of-way, and construction. So with the TCEP award, the $58 million for the 684 project, that project is now fully funded. So instead of taking the remaining $1.4 million in STIP, we've worked with the City of Lafayette staff to do a fund exchange. Basically, the city will now receive an additional $1.402 million in STIP funding via CCTA STIP share for the project to use for any cost escalations, cost increases, construction management, or even expand on their project. But in return, the city committed to paying $224,000 annually for 5 years in future Measure J Return to Source Fund into CCTA's Fund Exchange Reserve, or the FER, for a total of $1.12 million by fiscal year 30. So the FER was created back in 2021 as a flexible funding source for the authority to address any cost increases or use as matching fund for external fund sources. So in summary, staff seeks approval of the 2026 STIP recommendations and fund exchange agreement with the City of Lafayette, and to allow the executive director or designee to make any non-substantive changes to the language. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Just first question, the additional amount, will that have to be used for that project because it's STIP funds, or what happens if they don't have any cost overruns and the like?
Yeah, so that project has to be used for the project. I think if there's any savings, it will have to go back to the state.
We'll have to go back to the state, and then
Right.
what happens with the fund exchange?
I believe they've committed to paying us the Measure J, even Measure J Return to Source Fund. So
Regardless of whether they have to
regardless
use
of
that
what
money or
happened
not?
to the STIP funding, correct?
Okay, all right, that's interesting. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, I need public comment.
We have no public comments, written or virtual.
No public comments, thank you. I need a motion and a second. Okay, there are only 2 of you, so it's got to be,
What do you want to do, Rita?
take turns, whatever you want, yeah.
I'll move approval of the agreement.
Just say so moved.
Yeah,
We'll be
so
all right.
moved.
So moved.
Sorry.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes,
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Arner, Timbernall absent.
thank you. Sorry, but just got to keep things moving. Next item is an action item presented by Hisham to discuss programming of SB1 Local Partnership Program Formulaic Funds.
And I'm right here.
Oh, I was about to say, Hisham, where are you?
I
Why
don't
aren't you
have,
up there?
I don't have a PowerPoint, so I'll just take it from
Okay,
here.
all right,
So
great.
thank you,
Threw me
Madam
for a loop
Chair
there.
and committee members. Just to follow up on what Jay said, part of the action item was to do a fund exchange with the Lafayette. This is another fund exchange. It's with the Highway 4 Bypass Authority. As you know, every 2 years, we get about $4 to $5 million in SB1 local partnership program for MELIC funding. Unfortunately, this money comes with a lot of restrictions. One of them is that it has to be matched 1-to-1. It has to be spent in the 2 fiscal years they specify, in this case, fiscal year 26 and 27, and they come with strict use it or lose it funding, so we cannot just do nothing and bank it for a while. We have to program it to a project. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been working with the Bypass Authority on Vasco Road Safety Improvement Project, which will extend the median for another mile and a half, continuation of phase 1 that was completed back in 2012. We saw an opportunity that we could do an exchange with them and overcome all these restrictions. Under the proposed agreement, we would program our share, the $4.883 million for their project, for the construction phase. In return, once they get the money, they'll pay us back with a 10% discount. So they'll pay us $4.395 million. The benefit to us, we get to augment our FER, Fund Exchange Reserve, by $4.395 million, and it helps us in many ways, including meeting future challenges that we could see. And we could use it as a match for future grants. It comes with basically no restrictions. In return, to make this worthwhile for the Bypass Authority, they keep 10%, which is about $488,000, which they can use on cost increases or on their project, the Vasco Road, or any other ECRFA-funded project. So with that, I think between this exchange and the exchange that we just approved, we will have a balance of $7 million in the FER that will be uncommitted. And I think I'll just end it here. We are asking you for your approval to approve the exchange agreement number 729 with the Bypass Authority, as well as approval of resolution 2527P, authorizing the submittal of Vasco Road Safety Improvement Project Phase 2 to the CTC.
So what's the timing on that $4 million coming back to us for the FER?
So per the agreement, they'll pay us back no later than December 31st, 2027.
2027. I like to see the FER being
Replenished.
built back, replenished, yeah.
So cash flow wise, we are in the negative $4 million cash flow wise, and with this exchange and the next one, we'll break even in a year, basically.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, just glad to see you guys keeping an eye on that FER, because that was getting close to empty. Any public comment?
We have no public comments written or virtual.
Okay, do we have a motion and a second? There we go.
Move approval.
And
So I had to elbow you.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Can we have the roll call vote, please?
Commissioner G,
Aye.
Vice Chair Xavier,
Aye.
Chair Noack.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Commissioners Arner, Timbernall absent.
Great. Next item is correspondence and communications. We have no correspondence in the packet. Moving to commissioner and staff comments. Any commissioner comments? I will keep my comments for the full committee. There's no point in going into my stuff now. Staff?
I just got one announcement.
One, I just want to continue to thank Hisham just for keeping an eye on the FER. It's really his work that's really been building up all of the funding in the FER over time and has really provided us a flexible funding source to deal with some of the challenges like, paying, settlement cost on construction claims. So, but I also want to announce, and we talked about it yesterday at our staff meeting, but tomorrow is Hisham's 25th work anniversary with CCTA. Wow. So I want to just congratulate him. And I mean, he's been with the authority for, through basically the entire implementation of Measure J. And so I actually had lunch with Representative Worth yesterday, and she was just really just gloating about the great work that Hisham has done, particularly to help pass Measure J back in 2004 with Bob McCleary and Paul Maxwell. And so we've got a lot to thank Hisham for and the great work he's done over the last 25 years. So thank you, Hisham.
Great. Thank you. All right, with that, the next regular meeting is proposed for October 2nd. And this concludes our meeting. We're adjourned at 9:17. 9:22, according to my watch. Thank you. Is there an empty
Recording stopped.
Is there an empty office I can use to?
Yeah, we got space.
I just gotta get on this.